Now it's recording.
Can't believe this is my only student.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just me. Okay, we're good. All right. What is the role of welfare in a capitalistic society?
Hubert Humphrey's bust, he was a statesman from Minnesota's bust outside the rotunda, outside the Senate chambers. And one of my favorite quotes by him is, a truly civilized country can be judged on how well they take care of people in the dawn of life, and the dusk of life, and the shadows of life. And that's my answer to your question.
Why are people more upset about welfare assistance than corporate subsidies such as the Mall of America that receive $250 million?
That's a great question. Well, the right answer is the Mall of America and the Viking Stadium, which I believe might have been the largest tax subsidy in Minnesota history. Maybe, although it's definitely the largest public works project in Minnesota history, the Viking Stadium. And those were investments. So the investment of $250 million at the Mall of America, we're going to get back billions of dollars in tax revenue, sales taxes, property taxes, things like that. So it's an investment. Some people don't feel like those same investments in people, like entitlement programs, food stamps, things like that, healthcare, don't have the same benefits for society. And I think many, including myself, would say we have a moral obligation to take care of those that can't take care of themselves. And that's the true sign of a civilized nation, I think. But, yeah.
Do the people who need assistance receive it, or are there those who should not receive it and abuse it?
You know, for my entire teaching career, people have talked about welfare fraud, welfare abuse, welfare fraud. And yeah, there's people, I'm sure, I don't know anybody, but I'm sure it's abused. I'm sure there's fraud. But 95% are benefiting from, that their basic needs and necessities are being met by those that are the haves. And that's a good thing. But I guess the real question is, what can we do about the few out of millions, about thousands that do abuse it? But there's abuse. I mean, I'm sure there's, like Donald Trump prides himself in didn't pay any taxes during the campaign. Is that abuse? Is that like income tax abuse? Now, he would argue the reason I didn't pay any taxes is because I'm a business person who's investing in America. I'm building office towers, and this thing went off. Oh, it's still there. But the screen went dead, but that's still recording.
I'll start recording.
Okay. Anyways, some would say that that's a businessman's prerogative, that he's a business person. So he's investing in his company, and that's a good thing. But I'm sure if he hasn't paid any taxes in, whatever he says, 5 years or 4 years, and he shouldn't be talking about fraud. Not that I've ever heard him talk about welfare fraud, but it's a complicated issue, though, because there is abuse. We know that, but not in the numbers that I think some people think.
Does this contribute to the stigma of society towards people who receive welfare?
Yeah, that's a great question. Wow. I don't know why there'd be this stigma. I mean, God, everybody falls down, and they need help getting up. And again, there's people that have, when they're down, so they abuse it. Yeah, a few, but overall, we all need help. Otherwise, the worst case scenario is we don't help people when they need help, and then they end up stealing, and they go to jail, and now we're not just helping them out with, you know, minimum help. Now we're having to imprison them for $60,000 a year, which is, so it's a lot more expensive. So I just wish, you know, wouldn't it be wonderful if everybody in America had a livable wage and a livable lifestyle, that they could take care of a couple kids and have a nice home and a nice community somewhere, and that would be like this perfect vision. So how do we get there?
What should we do to improve our social safety net?
Minnesota, we have a pretty good safety net. I think it's very good. I think people that are struggling in Minnesota, we take good care of them, I think. But I know there's things like the achievement gap. You know, I'm a single parent, and I've got a couple kids, and I'm working 16 hours a day to put food on the table, because nobody I work for is paying me a wage that I can, you know, take care of my kids in an 8-hour shift. And so those two kids are kind of parenting themselves, and so what can we do for that mom or dad doing in that situation? And you know, there's those that would say you bring that on yourself and you reap what you sow, and then there's those that would say, you know, we need to take care of them because their bad decisions, if there were bad decisions, are just going to get magnified and multiplied, and next thing you know, we have more problems. So it's a tough issue, though.
Why do so many red state Republicans oppose welfare when they often are the greatest recipients?
That's a question. If I knew the answer to that, I'd be running the Democratic Party. That's a great question, because it is. I mean, why was there so many Trump supporters up on the range, where they have a high unemployment rate, and through no fault of their own, and probably, you know, and in Appalachia, unemployed coal miners supported him, and yeah, and I don't know the answer, but honestly, what a great question. And the Democratic Party needs to come to terms with that and figure out why, because if they can't figure that out, they're going to continue to lose elections at the national level. But that's where Mr. Bray would come in. He's like an expert on Democratic politics. So,
okay. How can we create more opportunity in society to get people off welfare, and how can we give them a hand up and not simply a hand out?
Yeah, it's that old adage, you know, teach a man to fish, or give a man a fish and they eat for a day, but teach a man to fish and they eat for the rest of their life, or whatever that quote is. It's a good quote. Boy, I wish I could answer that question too. It's a great question. You know, I mean, we just gotta. I think what we need to do is have a tax system that you know, corporate CEOs for companies that are making, you know, millions of dollars a year, while the low echelons in the same company, working just as hard, really, are making, you know, $16,000, $18,000, $22,000 a year. I don't know. I don't think that gap. When I was a kid growing up, in a small town in America, the doctor lived next door to the plumber, and the carpenter lived next door to the banker, and because the gap in income wasn't that great. I'm making these numbers up, but the banker, you know, made in those days 40 grand, and a school teacher made 20. And now the banker makes, I'm making the numbers up, $250,000, and the teacher makes 60 grand. And so there's just this big gap, and I think that's maybe caused a lot of the problems in our society, that middle class that used to be this big with like 10% and 10% and 80% were here, is now like, this is like 40%. And maybe that's the problem with the earlier question. So here you've got the 40%, and you've got 20 and 20. And I think most economists and social scientists would say revolutions start when there's no middle class. And when the middle class disappears, you're in for trouble. And so we can pride ourselves since about the 1940s and 50s. We've had a great middle class, and I think that's one of the reasons we're a great nation, because we had a strong, stable middle class, but we've gotten away from that. But I don't know how to fix it.
Do you have any overall thoughts you'd like to add on welfare?
No, but I just wish, it didn't have that stigma. I wish that people were more like, thank you, America. I made some bad choices, and now I need some help. And I took that help for a couple years, and without it, I don't know where I'd be today. But wow, thanks, and I'm back on my feet, and I'm gonna become a great American. I
Thank you so much.
don't know. Okay.
That was great. Thanks.
Okay. Well, good job editing it, or whatever your assignment is.
Yeah, I'll definitely send it to you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't think of that first hour.
No, they will as well.
Yeah, they would.
Okay.
They're planning to.
Yes.
Well, I'm gonna go home and go to sleep.
Yes, you deserve it.
Did you want to talk?
Oh, here's your phone.
Wait, just for a moment.